Welcome to the Business Pro League podcast. My name is Daniel Lauritsen, and I'm really excited to have a very special guest on the show today, being Zak Rogers. Zak is someone who I really admire. He was one of the first people that got me into CrossFit when I was investigating and trying out CrossFit and really exploring the industry for the first time. And I was there in the very early days of him starting his gym. So I wanted to bring him on and hear about his journey of starting that gym and the lessons he learned along the way. So welcome, Zak. It's so good to have you on today.
It's an honor, Dan. Thank you. I'm excited for this. This is going to be a bit of a journey for me, I think. And thanks for having me.
No worries. Well, let's start from the beginning. So I know for you, you obviously didn't start in the fitness industry. You actually started in the defense force. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that story and maybe a little bit about the story of the transition into starting your own business and why you did that?
Yeah, I grew up in a small country town in North Queensland, and I never really took myself as a small town country boy. So I was keen to get out of there, and joining the military was probably my ticket out. I had grandiose dreams of what the military was going to be for me. And I had a great time serving, met lifelong mates and built some really strong relationships there. And the military really brought me up too, I would say. I traveled around Australia tree lopping before the military. And when I joined, I certainly wasn't who I am now. And so the military sort of dragged me up, if you like. And I think to segue it to opening a gym, it was the biggest thing that I underestimated when I left the military was the loss of camaraderie, the loss of a team, and not so much identity. I didn't have a big identity crisis when I left early. I'm actually probably more going through that now, selling the gym. But certainly when I left, the biggest thing I noticed was nobody does team like the military. I went into real estate when I first got out, and that's real estate preaches a bit of a team approach, but they don't really know how to do that. And so I found it to be really singular. I found it to be working on my own quite a lot. And when I had been doing CrossFit a little bit in Townsville, they had a little bit of a following in the military. And I personally really liked events like the CrossFit Games, like regionals. And I was really keen to sink my teeth into that. And I've been doing CrossFit for not very long, but a good few years before the idea came to me that could I do this? Could I make a living out of this? And to be honest with you, Dan, that was the biggest thing. Was I wasn't happy in what I was doing. The gym that I was going to at the time, I knew I could do better. I knew that it could be better. And we originally, a really good friend of mine and still really good friends to this day, Scott Foley, him and I had a chat about it. And I said to him, I want to open a gym. And he thought I was crazy. And Scotty's an accountant. Something like a gym to him sounds like a lot of risk. And he very much tried to counsel me out of the decision. And in the end, we ended up becoming business partners. There was a lot of going backwards and forwards over 2 months, probably more like 6 months, talking about the decision. And I think probably more than anything, he wanted to save me from myself. And I really wanted him to be a part of it to help me out. And so he agreed to open a gym together. Originally, we actually tried to purchase the gym that we were going to in Albury. And it just wasn't the right time for the owner. And so we decided we'll open our own, and we went to Wodonga. There'd never been a CrossFit gym in Wodonga. At the time, there was only one other CrossFit gym in town, and another one had opened during that process. I went and coached at the CrossFit gym then called CrossFit Midnight Life in North Albury while we were still building CrossFit TMA. And we found a small, very rundown industrial shed in the middle of town, luckily enough, in Wodonga. And 72 Church Street in Wodonga was our first ever location, and we moved in there 2019, started fitting it out, and the journey began. So yeah, the long or the short of it, or the summary of that is I really needed to find something where I could earn an income for my family and be satisfied in what I was doing. And I found and I knew that I'd been involved in fitness, and I'd been a coach in the military alongside serving. I had a role as a strength coach at work, as doing some similar roles there. And so I had a lot of experience helping people. I had a lot of experience in training, and I had enough experience in CrossFit that I felt that was the brand that we could align with and we could follow. And it was about trying to build a sense of team and trying to build a community around us where there wasn't one already.
And for you when you were starting out, was starting the gym, was that out of necessity, or was it more just out of desire? For some people, they start it because they've got something behind them, they'll transition, they don't know what to do, so they're going to go start a business. But how was it for you? Was it out of necessity, or was it out of...
It was a bit of both, mate, to be honest, because we, as I said, we wanted to create something more than what we had here locally in terms of a CrossFit community. There was a few things that I knew that I could do really well. And I knew that where I was going in my real estate journey was not going to be fulfilling. I knew that eventually I was going to have to find something else to do because I was just unhappy. Financially, really hard market to break into, both in the industry and locally here. So it's certainly a sense of I have this great desire to do something more, but I also have the necessity to find an employment or create some kind of employment for myself where I get satisfaction. And then I guess the third tier to that was as well that I wanted to make something of my own, but I definitely knew that there was something special that Scotty and I could create. And I think we did that.
So let's talk a little bit more about that then. So when you were coming up with the idea of the gym, obviously it's a product. And so let's call it that for the purpose of this conversation. How did you come up with what you thought was a product that people were going to buy? Like what, obviously you talked a little bit about maybe some of the experiences and some other gyms that you thought you could do better, but what was that process like and how did you define that? Was it something that you worked out along the way or was it something, did you have a really pretty good idea of what you wanted to do from the start?
Yeah, great question, Dan. To be honest, I had no idea how to run a business when we first opened, but that was kind of Scott's job. That was, the partnership worked really well because Scott took care of a lot of the nitty gritty, a lot of the financial starting up, filled out the majority of the paperwork. It was my job to get on the tools and build the place and then work out what our culture would look like. And I had a really strong idea of what that would be. To answer your question quickly, it was a lot of reading and a lot of listening. So I read as much as I possibly could about business ownership, but in particular in the fitness industry. I had been following a business mentoring company called Two Brain Business, who worked specifically with CrossFit gym owners. They had a podcast and they had books. I read the owner's book, Chris, his name will come to me, but Chris's book, I actually got it on the shelf here behind me somewhere. It aligned with a lot of the values that I'd learned in the military, and it certainly helped us to build a picture. But it was, in my personality, I knew that I could build really strong relationships with people. I knew how to do that through my leadership experience in the military. I knew how to bring people together. I knew how to align people with a common goal. And I knew that was the thing that was going to make us successful. So I was never worried about the business being financially stable because I knew that if we focused in on providing outstanding service, outstanding coaching, a product that delivers results, the money would follow. So in the first probably 12 months, I let Scott worry about all that. And I just focused on building relationships with people. And the biggest thing one of the words that gets used a lot in the CrossFit realm is community, but not a lot of people know how to do that well. And what I thought doing community well was about focusing on the individual, not the many. A lot of CrossFit gyms when they open, they have a number of members they want to reach, right? I didn't focus on the first two members. I focused on Sally and Joe. If a couple came into the gym, I wasn't focused on, here's another potential two members. It was about what does Sally have going on in her life that I can contribute to? What does Joe have going on in his life that I can contribute to? How do I get these people to align with the values that we have? Or is there already commonalities there that we can show them this place can help to grow that for them? Of course, people want to know when they're joining a gym, how are you going to give us the results? How are you going to keep us safe? How are you going to teach us about fitness, about nutrition, about health as a holistic approach? And certainly there was a process to doing that. But first and foremost, I made people feel welcomed, included into the community. I made sure they didn't feel like another number. And there's lots of little things you can do that we can talk about that help to do that. But the biggest one was remembering people's names. Honestly, the biggest piece of advice one of the best pieces of advice I got that I still pass on to new business owners now is remember your customer's name. When they come into your shop, when they come into your cafe, when they come into your restaurant, when they come into your gym, particularly if they're locals, remember their name. And that goes a long way because people love the sound of their own name. They don't realize they do, but when they hear it, they love it. And that helped us a lot.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that was definitely part of my experience coming in. And I think as well in those days, early on, we were talking maybe 5 to 10 years ago, CrossFit didn't always have the greatest reputation, especially with the gym bros and people getting injured or whatever it was. And some of the things, there were two things that I really liked about CrossFit TMA. The first part was definitely the community aspect and your leadership in that community. And I think that was the thing that I learned about that season, was that community requires leadership. You can't just, community doesn't create itself. Someone's got to actually create the community and generate those connections and those relationships. And I thought that was really important. And then the other thing that I really respected about what you did is that, especially because I had preconceptions about CrossFit, was your focus on technique when it came to movements, and especially around weightlifting and the gymnastic movements and all that kind of stuff. And for me, I always described it as, it was almost like going to a gym owned by a military person, right? And in a really good way, right?
Mate, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad you said it in a positive way, because I was terrified of that. I was terrified that the approach that I wanted to take, being very organized, timely, coaching that is flexible, that moves with the person, but is also in a certain way matter of fact. Like, there is a way to do things, and there's a way to do things well. You can just do something, or you can do it correctly. And I wanted to do things correctly, and I wanted our coaching to be personalized to the individual, but I wanted the group to know this is how we do it, and we do it for really good reasons. And so I just jumped in with that, with our coaching style, and Scotty and I agreed that I'm quite a loud person, so I can control the room pretty well. Not that there's a big difference between leadership and leadership. We say that a bit in the military too, but there's a certain element of control that comes easy to military leaders, those that are good leaders and had experience in that world. And I think that was something that originally maybe the community was like, oh, wow, this guy's a lot. But eventually they started to realize we get a lot done in our time. When people come to us with 60 minutes in the day, they only have 60 minutes. They don't have 61, 65 minutes. Our classes, yes, they would run over sometimes, but that's probably because I was trying to give an essay on the snatch or something like that. But certainly we tried to make it the best 60 minutes of their day, and keep to the fact that we want to give our members, our people, as much as we possibly can in 60 minutes. And I guess to your point with technique, the way that I've always seen CrossFit is it's the tool. When you come into a CrossFit gym, the goal should be to achieve a high level of fitness, a high level of health, a high level of nutrition, and a high level of understanding of how your body works and what I need to do to fuel that and to keep it well. CrossFit is just a tool that we use to achieve that. And when we opened the doors, Scotty and I both agreed on that. And as the coaching team grew, that was one of the first things I said to people, like, people aren't coming to you to be CrossFit athletes here. They're not coming to you to be people who go to the CrossFit games and do elite level competitions like regionals. They're coming here because they see something in you, and they see something in this team, and they see something in this organization, this community that they resonate with, and they're going to give you a chance, and they're not going to give you a chance for very long. And you need to show them that we will effectively and efficiently and safely teach them how to, yes, perform CrossFit, but get fitter. And again, there's a big emphasis on it being about general physical preparedness rather than being an elite CrossFitter.
And I think that leadership style that you brought, I can understand how it might have been unsure how people would take it. But I think for the right people that you were attracting, and that were, I guess, the ideal kind of client or customer for you guys, I think it made them feel safe. I know that was the case for me. When I came, I felt safe in that it was a safe community because someone was leading it. The most unsafe communities are the ones with no leader, right? So there was someone leading it, but then secondary, there was someone that actually cared about me enough to make sure that I was doing things the right way. And the thing I also appreciated about you was that when you were coaching, and even the other coaches as well, and we'll get to that in a moment, but there was always a sense of, if someone was doing too much and you knew it, you respectfully reduce their way or made them
slow
change
it down a little.
Or whatever.
One of the big things with building culture is, I think, having hard conversations, or some people call them courageous conversations. You sometimes need to have the gall the leader must have the bravery to have conversations with people that have to be had, regardless of how hard they are. And that often are positive conversations, in that you're getting a really strong, strapping young man he's a rugby player, ex-rugby player like yourself, or they might be someone who's already done CrossFit for a little bit, or they're a jiu-jitsu athlete and they're coming in and they're like, I can crush this CrossFit thing, it'll be easy. and getting them to slowly over daily conversations throughout the week and over the months understand that, hey, if you want to follow a fitness program consistency for a long period of time and get goals out of it, you need to train smart. If you come in here to train 10 out of 10 every day and your rate of perceived exertion is off the charts, you will not be able to train very consistently, not very effectively, and you will not get the results you want to. And so that's always been a part of the mission statement in educating people on how to train. And so I'm glad you picked up on that. And that was something, again, that every time we hired a new coach, we would have that conversation with them and get them to understand that and buy in before they were even allowed to shadow on the floor.
And so let's go into that, because obviously the other thing I really appreciated was the other coaches. Like, the other coaches were always solid, great people before they were great coaches. And I think that's the other thing that was really great, is that you attracted a type of coach as well that really resonated with your culture, resonated with your values, and resonated with the way that you did things. What was the kind of approach that you took to, because I know that some people, I guess where I'm coming from is that there are some business owners, and especially in the early days, they'll just take whoever they can get, right, to put on their team to get the job done. But it felt like for you, there was a little more intentionality about the people that you brought into that team.
Absolutely. And I guess shout out to Jade Batten, the lady who owned CrossFit Midnight Life. She still owns CrossFit Midnight Life, but it's in another town now. When I came into the scene down here, I started coaching for her, and I told her when I started coaching, hey, I'm going to open my own gym within probably the next 12 to 18 months. Is that okay with you? And she took me in with open arms and taught me a lot, even though I was going to be a quote unquote competitor with her across the border. When we say competitor, we were in different towns, but she had that to consider. And she taught me a lot about who to look for in your community for coaches. And so I'm forever grateful for her teaching me what she did and taking me under her wing. And I'll send this to her so that she hears this. But first and foremost, hiring internally was really important to me. We didn't want to bring in coaches from the outside who had coached elsewhere and then just put them into one of our white coaching t-shirts and say, hey, now you're a leader in our community. We wanted them to prove themselves to our community. So any coach that I've ever had has had to go through like basically a 2 to 3 month trainee program, regardless of how long they've been coaching for, where first and foremost, they have to come and be a member. They have to pay to be a member. They have to show us that they want to be there. A lot of coaches travel around between gym to gym, basically chasing free membership. They rock up on day one and they say, hey, I'm a coach. Can I coach for you? Maybe they don't even want to be paid. Maybe they just want free membership. And that to me is a cop out, and probably not the type of person you want, because they're looking for a free meal ticket rather than looking to enhance, change and evolve your community. And so I tried to, obviously early on, we couldn't afford any other coaches. So the benefit I had was the first 12 months was just, we found Leah within the first 6 to 12 months. And I'll Leah, but I'll tell you more about her in a second. The first 6 to 12 months was just all about building the community, building the roster of athletes that we had, and setting in stone our culture and what we are known for, and what CrossFit TMA is still known for today, and being inclusive and holistic. And that allowed me to, over a long period of time, interview lots of different people in the gym who are now working for us, and get to know our members and those people who maybe already have a leadership position outside the gym somewhere, where they're already cultivating their leadership style. Does that style align with us? Does that type of personality align with what we're trying to do here? Is that person someone who lots of members in the community go to on a regular basis for advice or discussion? Is it the kind of person who's the class clown and is always loud and boisterous, or is it the sort of person who respects the coaching authority and what's got to be done in that 60-minute period, but also gets around to other members in a respectful and pleasant way and encourages them? And obviously we want people who, when you're looking for a leader in a fitness community, it's definitely, there's an element of they have to look and move and feel a certain way. If we're trying to sell fitness, we need to lead by example. And so certainly those people who would finish workouts faster, and those people who might be on the top sort of 20% of the roster of our athletes in the gym, that's not the first thing that you look for. But if there's an athlete in that top 20%, and then when they finish their workout, the first thing they do is they go and find other people in the class that they can encourage, other people in the class that they can help. And if they're walking around the gym with their chest puffed out, look how good I am, I'll finish this workout early, that's not who we're looking for. We're looking for the people who are always looking for work, always looking for somebody else that they can help, and they identify themselves really quickly. So my long-winded answer to your question there is those people identify themselves because you just can't miss them. They're leaders in the community straight away. Like where they join the gym within 30 days, you're like, that guy's got coaching potential, or that girl's got coaching potential. And luckily for me, our later on gym manager, Leah Sisley, walked into the gym one day. She was probably a member with us for a couple of weeks before she said, "Hey, by the way, I coach. If ever you need a hand, let me know." And I looked at Scotty that Saturday, I think it was, and I was like, "We do need help. Let's talk to this lady." And so I let that relationship evolve. She stayed a member for a while. She ran a couple of like pseudo classes for me and family members. So I would have like my wife and I, Scott and Alex, Scott's wife, and a couple of our friends would come in, and we'd do a private class on a Saturday, and she would coach that, and we'd get to know how she did things, because she'd been coaching for 5 to 7 years plus or something by that stage anyway, or 5 years plus by that stage anyway. They lived in Darwin and moved down, and so she'd been coaching up there. And so I knew that she had a really great resume and really great qualifications. But again, I needed to know who she was. And again, she identified herself as a leader in the community. People went to her for advice. She had male and female connections in the gym who felt really comfortable around her. She's a bit of an energizer bunny, like she's a bit of a hype girl, and she became that, and probably still is that in CrossFit TMA today. She later went on to be our business manager, and the relationship is still strong today.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so you've started the gym. You've started to attract some great members. You've got some coaches coming on board, and you're starting to build that culture. Was there any major shifts or changes or things that you had to do differently, or that you learned on the run that you're like, okay, I thought this was going to happen this way, but now I need to make some pivots. I need to make some changes because this isn't really working the way that I thought it was going to work?
Well, before I could probably learn some of those things, COVID happened. So we started fitting out the gym in 2019. We opened in, I think it's the 3rd of January, 2020. And we were open for about 8 months properly before COVID hit. And now looking at it, certainly not at the time I didn't think this, but now it was a blessing, because I look back at it now and I learned 5 years of lessons in 12 months. The first 12 months of COVID, we got shut down 3 times because we're a Victorian gym. So I live in Albury. The 2 towns are called Albury, Wodonga, typically the Twin Cities or the 2 towns or whatever people call them. Wodonga is in Victoria, Albury is in New South Wales. The Murray River runs between them, and that is the border. And I would go home to New South Wales, which would not be in lockdown, and I could go to a gym in New South Wales and I could train. I could go to the pub here and have a beer, but Victoria would be locked down. And so I'd drive across the river and I'd go to my gym where there was nobody, and I'd run Zoom classes or something. You know what I mean? So we did a lot to what I realized quickly, and particularly from the messages and the emails that came in during the first few lockdowns, was I'll tell you one thing I did realize is the community meant more to others than it probably even meant to me. But like, I learned really quickly, if I let this thing fail, if I give up on this business, I will be failing the 100 odd members that we had at that time. And I saw a huge sense of responsibility. And it's one thing that probably, kept my mental health in check. I'm a pretty resilient guy. I like to think of myself that way. I've read plenty on Stoic values, but there was some really hard and dark times in that. And the thing that really kept me pushing forward through that was my responsibility to the community that we had to keep the place afloat, run a Zoom class, hire equipment out, program workouts, do community events that are socially distanced, do whatever we possibly could to keep the community together. We ran a Facebook page where we had daily and weekly communications and scheduled events and all that sort of thing, where people could engage in an online sense as best as they possibly could, particularly in the early days of COVID when it was like lockdown. And I know because people told me, save people's lives. And I'll be forever grateful for the lessons that COVID taught me. And I think I'm a different man now than I would have been if I hadn't have. The business was doing pretty well early. And then I got a huge, excuse my French, kick in the bum to go, hey, this is going to be a lot harder than you thought it was. And it's definitely one of the reasons why we sold the gym after 5 years, because I'd really cooked myself to get it to where it was. And it was harder than it needed to be. But it taught me so much about how much I could and my relationships with my family, with my wife and my children could survive and still keep squeezing a little bit of juice out professionally. But anything, it taught me how to build relationships and sustain relationships. People were able to come to New South Wales, come across the border and train at gyms that were open. And they chose not to because we'd built a strong enough relationship with them where they trusted us to. We basically said, this gym will be here after COVID. Stay with us and I'll prove that to you. And we did. And we changed locations. We built it even bigger again.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about loyalty when you actually like the people that you're going to the gym with,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yep.
because it's true. Like I imagine some of the other gyms that don't have that community, or maybe they don't have that same relational connection, it would have been easy to make a call. Oh, I'll just go to the gym across the border for a while and I'll figure, I'll come back afterwards or see what happens. But I still remember the workouts we were doing in the car park out of the front of that gym. And it's funny, like I'd totally forgotten about it. But as I remember it, like those were some of the best workouts, was actually
the coaches ones. When we had our sort of the farewell to the Rogers family, having owned and run the gym up until a date only a couple of weeks ago. And the coaches, I had no idea they were doing this, but they made me a memory board, and they also put a video together of the last 4 years and 8 months, 5 years of workouts and community events, and all these photos that came up in the first segment of the video that were all from the previous 72 Church Street location. They were all about COVID, and I'd not forgotten, because you don't forget that, but I'd not reminisced that for so long. I was in tears. Like, I was beside myself. It reminded me how far we'd come. And that sort of brought that day and still now is bringing people together, those memories. But to answer your question as well, you said, what were some of the things you learned? One big thing, one of the biggest lessons I learned in that first 12 months was you can't do it alone. So coming from an infantry background, combat corps backgrounds, leadership backgrounds, deploying to the Middle East, I really thought that I was bulletproof, and running a gym wasn't going to be that hard. It was way harder than I thought. It was just like, it was phenomenally more hard than I thought it was going to be. Like in the first month, I was just going, oh my God. I was sleeping probably 4 to 5 hours a night just to get things, processes built, systems written down. I knew that we had to record things. So I was recording as much as we possibly could, as in typing it out. And so that there was a process behind everything. And then having to wake up at 4:30 every day to get in for a 5 a.m. class, it takes its toll. And I realized I'm going to need advice. I'm going to need people I can lean on. I'm going to need to build relationships with people who are more intelligent than me or have more experience in this area than me. And that's what I did. And I did that the hard way, because I had to fail before I had to fail a few times and let some people down before I realized, no, I'm not an expert in this. I need help. And I had some great leaders come into the community who I was able to leverage their experience and their intelligence off. I always had Scotty to lean on as well. Scotty and I were later, I actually bought Scotty, shared the business out. Him and I separated business partners, as you know, Dan. But that as well was another learning curve, where I realized when the business rested on my shoulders instead of two shoulders, I went, okay, cool. This is time for you to level up here and realize, again, you need help. You're not going to do this on your own. And the more and more that I read about leadership and business from business leaders, they build great teams around them. The businesses that are really successful, they're built on great teams. They're not built on one person. And I would never hang my hat on saying that I built CrossFit Team on my own, because that's not the truth. It was a team effort. My wife and I went through some massive battles to get it to where it is. My friendship groups grew stronger because I really took in what they had to say and asked them for advice. And then again, I think our community respected that. I think that was something that people grew to learn about me, was that if you come to me and you've got some feedback about the gym, if you present it to me respectfully and politely, I will action that. If I think that it's beneficial for the community, I will 100% action that. And I still like to think that people take that approach with me today. Just this morning, someone was talking to me about some things in the gym, and I don't even own their place, something that I'll go to Sheree and Trub with and speak to them about, because I'm really passionate about being the kind of person that people feel safe to talk to. And if you're going to be a business owner, then you have to be someone that people feel safe to talk to, because the moment that they feel like there's a closed door policy there, your business can't be as successful as it could be, is what I'd say.
Yeah, totally. So let's shift gears a little bit. I'd love to hear about how you handled that balance with family, especially in those early years, and how that kind of changed over the course of time. Like, what was that like, and how did you navigate that season with family?
My first daughter, Isla, she was born in May of 2019, so not 6 months before we started building the gym. So when I brought this idea to my then very early postpartum wife, she was dead set against it. We're not opening a gym. We're not opening a business. Our daughter is 3 months old. No way. I found a way to talk her around. And I promised her the same thing that I promised her on our wedding day. And then I said that you will always come first. Before our children, we always said that we wanted our marriage to come before everything else. And that was really important to us, because the way that I see it is the union of those two people, that happens well before you even consider having children, right? For children to be the reason that a marriage ends or has problems, it just shouldn't be that way. certainly not for us. And then I also promised that the business would not become before her. I later proved myself to be a liar because the business came before her and the children a lot. And that was really hard. But I'm very lucky and blessed to have a wife who's very understanding and who gets it and understands that her husband is the sort of person who has to get after it, and he's got to learn things the hard way. And she could sit here all day and she could tell me that I'm wrong. And at the time could have sat there all day saying that, hey, this is the way we should do it. I'm not sure that you need to be working this hard or this, that, and the other thing. And she knew that I just wouldn't listen. So she just didn't say those things. And what she would say, though, is, hey, we need more time with you. And that was really hard to give her and really hard to give our children. We've now got three children, Isla, Florence, and Saxon. And because of the burden that the early years had on my family, particularly because of COVID, that's the reason I decided to change career paths or seek a different career path and sell the gym, because I just knew that by the time Saxon came along and we had 3 children, they say that 1 feels like none, 2 feels like a lot, and 3 feels like 5. And I could heard that a few times now, and I could stand by it. When you have 3, it's a lot. And I wanted to make sure that as much as I could of the rest of their life, particularly that while they live at home, I could give them as much as I wanted to give them. And while I had the business, I wasn't doing either very well. When you're a business owner, there's something that you really got to accept, and that's that if you have children, there's a great autonomy to business. To being a business owner, you can come and go as you please if you systemize the place. If you build a strong team and then you systemize your business, you can come and go as you please. And to a certain extent, you can let it run by itself. But what you must accept as a business owner, I have found, is that there will always be a certain amount of brain energy or brain load devoted to your business. Your business will be another child, whether you like it or not. Nobody is immune to this. I've not met anybody that's immune to this. And every book that I've ever read on business leadership and how to grow your business 101 type stuff, they always talk about this. And if you want to, when you are on your time off, if you actually have a day off from your business and you want to devote that to your children and be 100% present for them, I've got news for you. You will not be, because you'll be sitting there and you'll be playing with little Johnny with Lego on the floor, and something will pop into your mind and you will need to write that down or put it in your phone and excuse yourself from a moment from that child, because if you don't, it will fester in your mind. It will keep growing. It will take all of your focus. So the biggest thing that I've learned, a couple of lessons that I started taking is tangible lessons, was that one, is when I had thoughts on the business, I would get my diary out and I would write them down, because if once they were on the page, they were out of my mind. But I tried to do that at scheduled times so that when I was with the kids and with my wife, I wasn't thinking about the business. So at the end of the day, at the start and the end of the day, I would use my diary like a business journal. I would write in it all the things I need to get done for the day. I'd write my list down. At the end of the day, I'd cross out the things on the list I got done, write down anything else on the list that I need to get to for tomorrow. And that used to free me up, at least for the first hour that I was at home. And things like that help. Things like putting your phone on charge in your room. So as soon as you walk in the house, you move your phone out of the main living space so you can't see it or hear it or feel that it's there controlling you. And another one is just to take a breath when you come into the home. Try to sit in the car, finish the emails, finish everything you need to do for the day, write your list, and then come into the home and just stop. People try to, I think I hear a lot of walking into the house and immediately trying to get to work to make up for the time they've been away and get the washing on or do the dishes or make the dinner or get the kids dressed or whatever it is you're doing. Just come in and just see everyone, just talk to everyone, just take a breath. Those are the things that I've learned to do now, because calm breeds calm. If you're calm around your children and you foster a sense of dad's got this under control. If you're the leader in your home and you're not calm, nobody's calm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's a big lesson I've learned. But how it affected my relationship was greatly, particularly early on in the building phase. I would leave the house at 4 a.m. and I would get back to the house at 8 p.m. and I would do that 5 days a week. Saturdays and Sundays, we had classes as well, but at least we would finish by 11 sort of thing. So really my kids, Isla particularly, she would see me on the weekends and that's it. You know what I mean? I would try to get home and see her for a date at the park and have a coffee with Laura and that sort of thing in the middle of the day. But regretfully, I can say that didn't always take priority. I would rather sit at the computer and get emails out or get programming done or mop the floors rather than go home, because I just knew that if I was at home, I'd be stressed about what I was missing out on at work. And my wife, probably for the last 5 years, hasn't had 100% of me. And even in just the last week, we haven't owned CrossFit TMA for about 7 days now. And she said to me that you're already different, and that it's just starting to settle in now. Like when I'm sitting on the couch in the evening and turning the TV on and maybe watching the footy with her, or we're watching a movie on Sunday night, she actually feels like I'm present, which is literally, she has said, that's the first time I've seen that in 5 years. So That's probably the biggest takeaway I can give you there. We had to, however, through that process, we had to learn how to connect with each other. So we had to find, if we're going to have this limited amount of time together, how do we connect in that limited amount of time? How do we keep our sex life alive? How do we keep our dating life alive? How do we stay in connection in terms of, do I know who my wife is now? Is she changing? Is she evolving as she gets older? Do I know what she likes? Do I know what she wants to do? Do I know what she's interested in? How's her professional career going? And that takes a lot of attention. It takes a lot of focus. It takes work. You actually have to think about those things. You can't just say that you're going to do it and not do it. You basically got to schedule time to make it happen. And those are things that we started to do that helped a lot. And without doing those things, I don't think we'd still be married now, but we loved each other enough and knew that our relationship was strong enough to survive that if we paid it attention. And that's what we started to do.
Yeah, the intentionality is so important, isn't it? It's just like, you just gotta make the time that you do have, you got to make the most of that time. And so what would you do differently? Would you do anything differently looking back on the journey and what you've done?
It's kind of like I've been asked that before, and there's answer A and B to that. Answer A includes COVID. Answer B, if there wasn't COVID. Do you know what I mean? It's harder to answer B because I had a business through COVID, and so I don't really know what it's like otherwise. But I'll start with answer B first. If COVID hadn't happened, I would have moved earlier. Where we were for longer than I care to admit couldn't sustain the membership base that we grew to. We did a good job of building out, even though we didn't focus on the numbers. And I think because we didn't focus on the numbers, we focused on relationships. That's why our business built quickly. But we went from 0 to about 120 members in 18 months, and probably even actually less than that. That's pretty good going in terms of CrossFit gyms. But the capacity that our little shed had was probably more like 80 members. So we had classes on a Saturday that had 40 people in them. And it just, to be quite frank, was not on. I should have just went, no, this is not good enough. We need to find a way out of this lease and we need to find somewhere else to go. And I was always looking, and so was Scott, but there was nothing that would really suit us. But I just should have put more focus on that sooner so that we could get into a new premises and give the members what they deserved and what they were paying for sooner. So that's one thing. But of course, with COVID, we weren't moving anywhere because we had no revenue. But that's definitely one thing I would change. And then the other thing I would do is I would actually, in option B, is I would actually focus on the money more than I did. And the reason I say that is because I became so focused, and particularly this was easier to do when I had an accountant as a business partner. So long as I got paid whatever I got paid every week, I really didn't care what was going on. At the end of your business activity cycle, if you haven't got the money to pay the tax bill or the superannuation bill or whatever it is, that's really stressful. And that was stressful a few times, particularly after Scott left the business and he wasn't managing the money anymore and I'd bought him out. I had to learn really quickly how to make that work and I had a family budget at home, but I didn't have a business budget. And Scott taught me a lot about how to budget for your business and how to hold money, not just make money, but how to hold it and how to prioritize it and how to organize it. So it's what's for what. I just wish that I spent more time on that early because it would have saved myself and my marriage a lot of stress. When you are promising your wife that this year we're going to make X amount out of the business, and then you get to the end of the year and you go, oh, by the way, I need to take $10,000 of our own money to pay our tax bill. That's pretty hard a conversation to have. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of business owners that have had that conversation though now. Mm-hmm. And so I say to people, get some business acumen first. Rather than opening a business and learning that hard way, if you can work in a business that's like for like in the same industry, ask the owner if they'll mentor you. Like, you've got to do this sort of stuff for free because a lot of small business owners can't afford to be paying somebody to learn. Go to somebody and say, hey, for the next 6 months, can I just watch you do the books? Can I sit with you and learn why you pay that instead of that and why you put money there? And what is it? What is the back cycle? What does that mean? What are the costs associated with business that someone who hasn't done it before doesn't understand? Because that was a massive learning curve, was learning that 10% of every dollar you make is not yours. You know what I mean? That's not really something you consider until you go into business. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, got this figure. And then your accountant goes, yep, now take 10% of that and put it in that account. And you're like, oh, that's not really fair. And let's take that up with the Prime Minister. And yeah, so that's a long answer to the answer B if there was no COVID. What would I do different in what we actually did? Look after myself. I gave everything to everybody else. Like I burnt my candle at both ends, and there was like a blowtorch at either end of my candle. And the last thing that I was thinking about was my own fitness, my own food. There would be days where I wouldn't eat till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd quickly rush home to eat some food. And before evening classes would start, and Laura would be like, "Why? What's going on with you? Why are you so hungry?" And I'd be like, "I haven't eaten today." And Laura's a real foodie, and one of her joys is cooking for her family. So that really upset her. And then training, owning a gym. Historically, people that open gyms think, "Oh, I'm going to have all this time to train." You have way less time to train, because when you want to train, you're coaching classes. And when there's the middle of the day, it's like there would literally be days where I'd be so busy where I'd go, I can either clean the gym now, and that has to be done because it's filthy, or I can train. And I'd go, oh, business comes first. And I'd go, and I wouldn't train for 4 or 5 days at a time. And that can really start to overweight you, because again, you want to lead by example. And if you're like becoming not very well, not very healthy, not very fit, then the members can see that when you do work out with them, and they do see, and you become embarrassed. Nobody's looking at you going, oh, look at this couch potato. Nobody's judging you like you judge yourself, but you feel it, and you put this huge pressure on yourself. And that really eroded my confidence and self-esteem and my mental health for a while. And until I got a business mentor who started to help me with my calendarizing my day and scheduling in their training time. And basically now my day consists, if I make an effort to calendarize my week or my day, the first things that go in there are the things that are most important to me. I'll look at the day and I go, when am I going to spend time with my children? When am I going to spend time with my wife? And when am I going to exercise? And then I start to go, now I've got time for these other appointments. Whereas I think a lot of business owners, including myself early on in the piece, here's all the appointments I've got to get done. Oh, is there somewhere there where I can squeeze in 15 minutes of training, or somewhere where I can eat for 5 minutes, or I can just stop and sit down and breathe? It's okay to do that. And that's another huge lesson that I've learned. It's okay to stop, sit down, breathe, take a minute. So I'll definitely look after myself a whole lot better, because I did not do a good job of that. And I think if I had, I could have owned CrossFit TMA and stayed in this industry for 10 years. But I tried to do too much too early, and we achieved great success in our business. When we sold it, it is very profitable. It did pay us really well financially. It met a lot of really strong metrics that I know other gym owners only wish that they could meet. And more importantly, we left a legacy, and we helped to change people's lives for the better. Gave to some really great charities through 24 Hours of Heroes and the like. But I did all of that at the detriment of my mental health.
Yeah. You've now exited CrossFit TMA. What's next? What does that look like for you?
I'm going to keep doing CrossFit because I love it. I don't think there's a greater strength and conditioning program out there. I'm going to keep coaching, but we're moving to Geelong. I've got a job, as I said earlier, I was in the military, so I have a job in domestic private security. Let's just leave it at that. And that job's in Melbourne. I'm going to be traveling. I've got a really good roster where there's time on and time off, and there's lots of time off. It's a bit like if you're working in the fireys. And so I get to spend a lot more time at home with my children. I get to spend a lot more time doing the things that I want to do now. And it's going to be a break for us for the next 2 to 3 years. The company is evolving, so it'll be interesting to see where I end up moving in terms of leadership roles and managerial positions and that sort of thing. But it's a really exciting adventure for us. In my time off, I'm going to be coaching CrossFit, doing jiu-jitsu, spending lots of time at the park with my kids. Isla and Florence are just getting to the stage now where they can kick a football and pass a football. So we're really enjoying some time outside. Excited to move back towards the ocean. I grew up on the ocean, so being able to see that every day will be really nice. And I'm excited to, again, work in a team. One of the things with owning a CrossFit gym that's really interesting, I set out to build a community around me. I felt this loss of camaraderie, loss of team, loss of service as well. And so I was the key, and I built a lock to fit the key. And we did that, and it was great. And it felt really good. And the community has benefited from that work now. But being a business owner, as I'm sure you can agree, Dan, can feel a little bit lonely, like you're on an island and everything rests on your shoulders. You're the guy, you're the leader, the buck stops with you. And that can be a really lonely place. So even though I built this great community, I still felt a little bit lonely at times. Not always, but at times. I'm really excited to have a boss. I'm really excited to have somebody who I can lean on, who pays my bills. I'm really excited to be part of a team, not be the leader of the team. And I'm going to be working with some really great guys, really good operators, people who are real salt of the earth kind of men. And I'm really excited to get back into that world because it'll be pressure off. And again, that's advice I've given to another business owner recently. If you decide to move on, please take some time. Don't just go like, what's next? Right now, I've got about 3 months before my contract starts, and I'm doing nothing in that time. I'm coaching at CrossFit TMA. The relationship with the people that bought it is great. Really good friends of ours. Still really good mates with Scott and Alex Foley as well. So the whole coaching team, I'm still really good friends with, and I'm excited to be a part of that as a team member. But other than doing that, I'm doing a couple of diplomas in leadership, business management, a few different things as well. But it's very much like low key, and I'm just taking the next 3 months to take a breath before diving into the next adventure.
Awesome. That's great. So last thing, if you could leave one thing for someone who's currently in the trenches of their business, trying to work out and scramble out of the hole that they are currently in, whatever hole that is, what would be the one thing or one piece of advice that you would want to give them in this moment?
Absolutely. Get a mentor. This is what I was told by my business mentor. I did it. This is coming from me, not my previous business mentor. That saved us. We were at a point where I'd brought Scott out of the business. I felt very lonely. I felt like I didn't know enough. I did. I could have kept going. I would have found a way, but it made it infinitely easier to have a fortnightly or monthly call with a business mentor. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, you pay for it, but it's 100% worth every dollar to sit down and they'd go, okay, what are the problems of the week? And you could just unload that on this person, just like a client does to a personal trainer or a CrossFit coach. He was my mental health advocate as well as my business coach. And he would let me get it all out and he'd go, okay, take a breath, write it down on a piece of paper. Let's start ticking that off. And he'd show me a process for getting these things done. And if it does anything, it just expedites you solving all those problems. So all those things that you otherwise, you're torn between social media, marketing, your emails, client-facing appointments. You're torn between all these things. They help to focus you and build a system and build a process around how to get done what you need to get done in the day. And that is worth every dollar. And it's just somebody else to lean on who understands you and knows what you're going through. And it makes you feel a whole lot better. It makes you feel like you're not alone. And it does severely expedite the process from being in the trenches, being in the hole, particularly if it's financially in the hole, to being profitable and to having a business that can look after itself. By the time that I left CrossFit TMA, I was no longer coaching. I was only coaching when a staff member was sick or needed a day off. I was mentoring as much as I could. I was around the business every day, but I was there for probably 4 to 6 hours. And there was plenty of times where I'd go away for a month holiday, or I'd go and do other contract work for a month. And I had a business manager and we had 9 coaches. And that place was very much, when I wasn't there, completely autonomous of me. And that should be the goal of every business owner if they want it to be that way. But you can get there. And I think of myself as a well-read thug. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for your time today, Zak. It's been an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed hearing your story, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that will be inspired by your story as well. And I just want to thank you for your time. And
this is really special, Dan. Thank you.
No worries. We'll looking forward to seeing the next stage for you and seeing the awesome family that you get to create over the next few months. I think it's awesome.
I'm looking forward to it too, man. Thank you so much. That was a enjoyable process for me too.
Excellent. Thanks, Zak. Hey, thank you so much for watching and listening to the Business Pro League podcast. It's been an honor having you with us. If you'd like to hear more stories about local businesses making it in the marketplace, we'd love you to subscribe wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. And we can't wait to have you next time when we interview the next special guest. See you then.